And I have the distinct pleasure this evening to welcome you to our fall lecture series, Just Environments. Tonight we will hear a talk entitled Design. Every place tells a story of belonging and not belonging. The more you belong, the more invisible these boundaries become. Design has the power to challenge and redefine places, the stories that they tell. Our speakers tonight, Yulia, I'm going to kill your name, Bortkevich, and Alison Berg, come from Gensler's Boston office. Gensler is consistently ranked the #1 interiors firm in the annual Top 100 Giants list published in Interior Design magazine. Design director Yulia has over 20 years of experience and has led design of interiors for award-winning projects across industries. Her projects are bespoke solutions as she collaborates closely with her clients to develop inspiring spaces and distinctively reflect each organization's value and culture. Yulia's work is functional and sustainable and innovative in design. Educated both in Europe and the United States, Yulia has a diverse perspective on architecture and design. She fuels her creativity through travel and finds inspiration through fine art, theater, and film. Alison Berg is a multifaceted designer with over a decade of experience realizing inspiring, impactful spaces across industries. Alison's design sensibilities are inspired and informed by her lived experience, day-to-day life, travels abroad, and the experiences of others' experiences and stories. As an advocate for clients and end users, she works closely with project teams to make sure the vision is carried out through all design phases. Please join me in welcoming Yulia and Alison.
Thank you, Denise. Now you know who. Okay. Well, now you know who we are. So no further introduction is needed.
But we are so happy to be here with you in person and on Zoom to chat about this topic tonight.
And Denise mentioned that we do both work at Gensler, and I think most of you have heard about Gensler, but we are a giant and there's nothing to hide. We're about 7,000 people across the globe in about 52 offices. But really what we try to do is create this incredible network of professionals and colleagues, stay local and work local and focus local, although we have outreach to expertise, to international projects, and kind of form our teams based on what we do best rather than kind of the big and giant approach of it. We've started in we were founded in 1965, so it's been a long time and it's a great and established firm. We also work in 29 practice areas, and what it means really is that we work in different areas of design. We have experts in different areas of design. We work in architecture, work in landscape design, we work on lots of interiors, but we also do strategy, we do research, we do product design. And so this is we are a broad spectrum design firm and not just interiors, as we most often recognized for. And great place to work, of course. Oops, the wrong one. And the topic today, what we really wanted to talk to you about is designing to the edges. And what is the idea of designing to the edges? It's hard to, instead of thinking of an average and creating design that kind of provides a solution for a person that we imagine and that we ask everybody else to adopt, you really look at the fringes of the abilities, and you design for people who have the hardest time kind of walking through spaces, dealing with environments, dealing with the social kind of atmosphere, and you really adopt the design to fit their needs. And by doing that, you really create better spaces for a larger population, and you really address everyone and create a happier environment. I keep pressing the wrong button, so apologize. And, you know, it's a theoretical concept and it's really hard to explain sometimes, but I love this example of two famous museums. One is in New York City, this is Met, and one is in London, it's Tate Modern. And we would say, looking at the Met, we would say, this is the ultimately inclusive experience. This is the Great Stair, it's in the middle of the city, everybody's welcome. Until recently, it was a free museum, so anyone can walk in, right? But if you think about it further, who can actually walk in? Who can actually sit on the stair? How far can you get? There's actually a woman with a stroller and that is struggling to get her child down the path, and the ADA access. Of course, we know that for wheelchair access, there is an exit somewhere, but you have to follow multiple signs to get around the building into the back hallway and get to where you need to go. And designers, not anybody else, designers made the decision to take modern with a similar condition of significant grade change to say, you know what, majority who wants to use the stair can go down these little steps on the side, but everything else becomes a ramp. And it is a very equitable experience for anyone. The whole family can walk down. People are still laying down on the floor and having lunch like they do on the steps of the Met. But everyone is invited, and there's a clear message. We are open, and we are for you, and we are for everyone. And so this myth of the average sort of goes to the wayside, right? We may have a similar IQ, but how we experience space, how we engage with with our colleagues, how we engage with environment, how we walk, how we talk is very, very different. And so who said that the same space and the same environment would work for this mythical average? And that's really not the case. And so with that, we will, what we want to do and want to illustrate how we've done it is really design spaces of belonging and spaces where everyone can walk in and find their place and see themselves comfortable in the environment that really addresses all the special needs and addresses the special requirements.
And so tonight we'll illustrate all of those concepts through 4 stories that from kind of large and small, this historied, very mission-driven foundation and the way that they were able to impact their space through renovation, to that sort of day-to-day corporate workplace project that you may run into quite often across your career, to a dance studio where you're seeing things through a very different lens, and then ending with this really kind of audacious, inspiring, that kind of big project that you can only hope to really see in your career, and that we feel inspired still seeing that today.
Alison, can you step closer to the
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Betty. And so Yulia is going to take us through the Ford Foundation project first.
So the Ford Foundation project, and I don't know how many of you know what Ford Foundation is. It was founded in the 30s by the Fords of the automobile industry. And this is a foundation that supports scientific, educational, charitable pursuits of advancement of public welfare. And it is an incredible foundation that's done a lot of good and not only donated funds, but also created programs and initiatives. And they were fortunate to be founded by a very successful and in 1968, a building was actually constructed for them in New York City. It is a historic building. It's a fantastic space. It has incredible indoor garden. And then recently I think completed in 2019, so not that long ago, they had a chance to really renovate it. And given that the project was built in the 60s, it wasn't exactly adaptable for all users. It was built for able bodies. It was a very kind of a close environment. And the team, not only Gensler, but also experts that supported us with the client, really took a step back and said, like, what do we want to achieve? And the goal was really to create a space that's a fully inclusive hub for champions of social justice. This is like a huge, audacious goal. Like, what do you do with that? But there are many wonderful things that happen on that project. But what I want to show, really illustrate, is like 3 things that blew my mind when I learned about it. And that one of them is this incredible winter garden. And it always existed. It was part of this incredible historic building. It was designed by a very famous landscape architect, but it was dwindling and wasn't very well taken care of. Not only that, but also was only accessible by going down the steps, through revolving doors, into the garden, and then a meandering path of many, many stairs. And in renovating the building and renovating the spaces, what the team did, they started to think about, like, well, what is the message that we want to send? We are here for social justice. We are here for inclusivity. We're here to promote these great ideas. And yet we have this incredible space we can share with everyone. So instead of just replanting it, they replanted the whole thing. And not only could you get there by stairs, they also leveled the plane. You could walk right off the street, regraded the entrance, created a meandering path. You can kind of see it in the slide that you can go up the stairs, but you can also get to 90% of that garden by never touching the stair and just following the ramp. They created a sensory garden for somebody who may have visual challenges. They created small places where you can hide, and really opened up to the city. So in the winter, you can walk in and really enjoy this incredible space, and regardless of your abilities. And then this is an external give back. And an internal thing was that you can see this courtyard that has a fantastic view of the mentioned winter garden, but what was there was a line of private offices. People were doing important work, we knew that, but no one really had access to the daylight inside the company. And in New York, buildings are very close together, so the best light came from that space. So through conversations, through visioning sessions, through a lot of discussions, the team eliminated offices. They opened up the space. They gave the daylight to all employees. They also celebrated that with incredible art collection on display that could be seen from the garden by all employees as you're walking in. And all of a sudden you're seeing the work happening, you're seeing in and out, and it creates an environment that's definitely speaks of togetherness. And by doing that, there was a sidekick. They were able to actually free up the space and invite other charitable organizations share the building with them and create this almost a hub for social justice. And the spaces tell a story that may be in the background, right? That the architect can tell you, but you experience living in it. But it's as important in a space like this to actually speak the story. And so the team, our brand design and our graphic design team, along with archives of the Borg Foundation, created this program across the building where it is on display that talks about the champions of social justice. It talks about the programs that they've created, it talks about the arts, it talks about changes, and it is not only in pictures, but it's also in stories that are written on the wall. And this is a very small part of that bigger project. It's been highly published. If you're interested, Google it, you will learn a ton, but that attention to detail and inclusivity goes really much further down to signs on bathroom doors. We're really proud of it, and it's a big project, but we also use the same kind of ideas and the same approach in the projects that we do every day. And so Alison is going to talk about a project that she worked on that is brought 2 companies together. And it's a different set of challenges, but a really interesting way of thinking of how do you accommodate, how do you bring people in one space and make them feel that sense of belonging and sense of home.
And so we felt like this was a good representative project, as we said before, of that workplace project that you might come across time and time again, and thinking about the process through every step of the way. and challenging yourself to not just go on autopilot and say, this is another project, this is what we're rolling out, and really listening to the end user, and thinking about what they need for that specific project. Thinking about not just who's the loudest voice in the room, but who we haven't heard from at all yet. And so Metadata is a medical data analytics company. And at the time of this project, they were merging with, or they had acquired Shift, which was a startup in Waltham. So as Yulia said, this is really about bringing people together. It's bringing and attracting new talent to a new downtown location. It's literally bringing groups of people from 2 different companies together. And at the same time, sewing together the 2 cultures and not sort of letting one overtake the other. And so through those initial conversations where you're talking to the project stakeholders, you're doing interviews, you're understanding who they are and what they need going forward, it was clear that this idea of an amenity hub was very important to them. So as you can see in the image, your typical pantry cafe space, but also a large training room where you are connected to the global network that Metadata has. So you can have live streams and town halls. Also, we found that Shift was a pretty competitive bunch. They had trophies and they wanted to bring those over and display those and have a lot of game amenities brought into the space. And so we did some studies for kind of the party of how that worked in the overall floor plate. We looked at separating them and having that kind of formal entrance, and then the hub was more in the workplace. But what we ended up on was really that energizing hub that's right in the front door, and kind of clustering everything together. And what that actually does, it's providing you a choice, because you can come in that front door and you can actually avoid the hub altogether if you want, and you can walk around the back of the reception and go right to your focused work. You can bring your bike up the elevator and you can go through the hub instead of the heads down workspace where people are already busy. And within the hub itself, it's not just this one big open space that you kind of feel like, I don't want to be out there in the mix. I don't necessarily want to be in the middle of everything, but I want to be adjacent. I want to kind of be alone yet together. And so there are different alcoves and there's a game room that's kind of, it's adjacent, but it provides kind of a variety of spaces within that hub. And that choice extends into the workplace as well. So designed like a circuit breaker, there's kind of large swaths of open workplace, and then that's interrupted by some closed meeting rooms or soft breakout space, and that fluctuation between environments, colors, space types. There's some themed rooms that you'll see later, enclosed focus rooms. All of that is to say that there is choice. There are different postures, and that variety is really key, because focus and unplugging and collaboration, those words can mean very different things to different people. So when we're looking at the amenities that they have, and we're thinking about this work style spectrum, which is really, it's even more than just work. It's allowing you to kind of be your whole self at work and socialize, reflect, pray, close your eyes, and do all of those things that could be, super productive, high energy collaboration, being able to take a moment in a quiet private room, but also providing those in-between spaces. And through that is where you really start to engage with a lot more people than what you would have thought, even just doing the edges or trying to go up to that average. And it's important to remember too that, you as a single person could go through these modes multiple times in just one day, in just a morning. And so having the spaces that are sort of giving equal support to all of these types, and not just saying, well, we have one quiet space all the way in that corner, you can walk all the way over there, is really important. And then this is a zoom in of some of those themed rooms that we said, which is not for every client, but this is really important to them. They sent out surveys those themes, the names for the, and that's another part of inclusivity as well. It's really letting people see their personality and have that come through the space. Also definitely fun for us as designers to do something that's a little more out of the box, getting to work with the lighting designer on some of these more interesting pieces. But again, thinking of this entire arc of the project as so much choice, so much variety, and being able to look through the lens of that specific client, what they were going through at that time and how they wanted to see their future, which leads us to thinking about walking in very different, tiny ballet shoes, where Yulia will talk to us about the Boston Ballet School in Newton.
Thank you. I wish you told the story about the prayer room.
Oh,
So the previous project that Alison told me the story that I think is very telling of how we can predict behavior and we can design for this very unique and specific needs, but everyone will find a way of using it in their own way. And I think there is a prayer room in the space that has the foot washing station, but I think people choose to use it maybe after a bike ride as a shower. And I think there's a level of, I guess, accepting the behavior that comes with this variety of spaces is also interesting phenomenon that we continue learning, and it's quite fascinating. But so walking in the little shoes, that's a it's always fun to design for kids, right? Like you get to be your former self, hopefully, and remember what it's like. And the School of Boston Ballet again was renovating their space, and they really wanted, their goal was to design something that will last them for the next 30 years until the next renovation. And they wanted to make sure that they incorporated everything that they've learned up to date. And the quote that dance is the art form that belongs to everyone is actually their quote. It is a statement that they strongly believe in. And this particular studio has a program that's called I have to look it up because adaptive dance program. And this adaptive dance program is for about 130 people of different ages, from little kids to grown-ups. And it teaches dance to people with different abilities. So there is a group of persons with autistic spectrum. There is a group of people with Down syndrome. There is a group of persons that have limited mobility, and they may be in a wheelchair or use some sort of walking device. And they decided to say, going to graduate and go to some amazing company somewhere out in the world, will be able to practice in any space we design. A little 4-year-old who comes with her mother and is nurtured and is able to do it will dance on the kitchen floor. And I think it's easy to accommodate for them. But what we really want to do is we want to design a space that is comfortable, inviting, and easy to use for those 130 people that are now programmed. And we talk to process is incredibly important. Hearing the voices is the main tool that you can have as a designer, as an architect, as a landscape designer, as any professional. And hearing is different, right? That hearing is different than listening, and hearing is different than just asking a question. And there's a good example of saying, like, okay, tell me how you make your tea, and person will tell you one step. It's in fact, it takes 20. So in this we ended up talking to students, to teachers, to parents, to caregivers, to specialists who work with children and adults with special needs. And as a result, hopefully design a space that really is accommodating for the fringes and the edges that we talked about. Again, first step, leveling the plane, making sure that you can easily access everything. Not focusing on bright colors was the big component, making sure that things are easily identifiable, but there are no disruptive patterns or colors or loud visual aspects that that are present. Okay, I keep doing this. What is wrong with? I think it's okay. Thank you. See, I need Alison all the time. So one thing that it's sort of not easy to accommodate in the workplace, but thing that we talk about a lot when we design spaces for work is different environments. But an easy thing like changing or dropping your bag could be very difficult for somebody who is on the spectrum and who has difficulties walking into a room. So there's a changing room that's all inclusive, that you can walk in and have the showers, but there are also locker rooms that are distributed around the studio where somebody can just walk up and drop off their bag and not deal with the public and not deal with lots of people. There is, I'm now afraid to tap. Again, you can see that the studio is very neutral. Again, no bright sounds, but it's visible to the waiting room. So every kid can imagine themselves being at that next level, being that big ballerina. And then talking about spaces for breakout, spaces for waiting, spaces for this idle time, and creating zones that have art flooring, that have visibility of the studio, that you want to mimic, you want to dance, you want to be loud, but also making sure that there are spaces in the back where you can be together but alone and be quiet and read a book, and using materials and using kind of colors that calm that down and really communicate visually what that space is for. I think the success of that project are the stories that parents tell. And one of the parents came up to the program director and said, I am so thankful that you design a space for me and for my child. There's not a single hand dryer in the entire building, because loud noises is also something that can provoke a crisis behavior in someone. So little things matter. Thinking about details and thinking about individuals and thinking about each person matters. And when we do that, the spaces are amazing. And they hopefully, with this environment, we hopefully showing the kids how thinking of others is a good thing. And hopefully they grow up to be adults. And with that way of thinking and with that way of approach to the world. And with that, I want to introduce this project that Alison's going to talk about, but it is incredible story and very emotional. And one thing that I want to tell you that this project was done by students like you. So it was done by our interns that come in the summer and work on the project along with other projects that the project work that they do. And they always work on the big kind of inspirational non-for-profit kind of idea. And this was one of the best ones we've had. So
and so the project was SOLA, School of Leadership Afghanistan. The word SOLA in the Pashto language also means peace. And it was founded in 2008, just 4 girls in a rental house with the mission of providing that that safe space. You may not be able to make the journey to school every day. And so the concept of having that more kind of border school kind of method where they're getting to stay and live together, they're bringing together girls from across the country to live together and really empowering this next generation of women, which is a really special mission. The project was, as Yulia mentioned, done by Gensler interns, also OJB landscape architects, and Tomasetti structural engineers, and of course the faculty, leadership, and girls who attend SOLA. So it was a really great collaborative process. There were video recordings that were sent, there were models, there were sketches. So you'll see snippets of that in the video that will show to create the design that will hopefully one day imagined. So I'm gonna have 2 seconds here to transfer over to the video.
That's interesting.
So with materials that NASA was able to create and our intern team was able to create, Sola was able to secure some funding and the walls started going up before unfortunate events happened in Afghanistan. But Alison has a great story.
Yes, when everything was happening almost a year ago, we were just like, oh my gosh, where are the girls? Hoping that everything was okay and hoping that we would hear a word from them. And I was in Rwanda a few months ago and someone just happened to mention this girls' school from Afghanistan. And I was like, how many girls' schools in Afghanistan could there be, right? That has to be Sola. And it was. And they had landed in Kigali and there was a group of girls that were there and luckily for kind of their founding ethos of being a boarding school kind of type of school that, you know, still works for them to be in Rwanda. And so their school year started in September. They have girls from, I think, 10 different countries, but it is still a majority of Afghan refugees. And the mission is still definitely for them to go to Afghanistan and finish the construction of this school. So it gives anyone who has touched this project still some goosebumps to see the video and to think about where they are today and hopefully where they will be in the future. I think we can. So our conclusion after that. So thinking about all of this sort of mythical average and the projects that we've seen, and you know, how do you keep sort of taking that with you through life as the world changes, as standards change. And you know, we say that we design by engaging and listening, listening being absolutely critical and making sure that all those voices are heard, researching and talking to experts. You know, we're lucky that Gensler has a robust sort of research group and fund, but also, you know, going outside and leaning on the experts and the consultants in the field, and of course staying curious, because I think that's how you can have a lot of great conversations and make a lot of great things happen. And so for that research institute, you know, there's things like all gender restrooms, white paper that it's just great to be able to have that type of research and understanding that language is powerful and day to day. You know, I knew this deck existed and someone messaged me and they're like, hey, I need to understand how to really communicate this best to my client. Like, do you know if there's kind of the way that we should be talking about this? And I said, yeah, there's a project that used this research. So here's the deck, like you can go read through that, and understanding, you know, what has been researched for just a variety of things is really important.
And and of course, inviting as many people to the table and constantly thinking about who haven't we heard from, and who is that outlier that really hasn't spoken, and making sure that the quietest voices are the loudest, most impactful voices in the conversation about design. And I think staying curious was part of that kind of mindset of continuing to ask and continuing to listen and continuing to design better spaces. And so if we think broad and we think beyond our abilities, and we don't design for ourselves, but we're designed for everyone around us, and we don't think about the average, but those quietest voices, we hopefully make a huge impact and have better spaces, better cities, better environments, and as a result, a better world.
It's time for questions, and I will ask the chat for that soon in the room. And if you would just do us the favor of repeating the question, no one.
Sure.
On the topic of social justice and inclusiveness, and knowing that Gensler is an international company, I'm wondering where the US ranks in terms of either leading that or following what other countries are doing.
That's an interesting question. So the question was, given that we're doing a lot of international work and inclusivity and social justice and how it is addressed through design, whether we as a US are leading that idea or the design in that, or we're following. I think it really depends on the country and depends on who we compare ourselves to. I don't think we're leading. I think we are leading in certain aspects. For example, it's accessibility, adaptability of spaces, probably gender, and acceptance of a variety of genders. I think there are other aspects that we're probably following and learning from other countries.
So the 4 stories, right? I got 2 of them. I was just wondering if you repeat the other 2. So I have actions and spaces speak louder than words, and then art form that belongs to everyone. What was the second and fourth one, please?
The second one was bringing people together, and then the fourth one was the dream of peace.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick has been doing a lot of work, and my question would be, what would you guys say about the scripture of design?
So his question was, we have done a lot of design work so far, and what do we think the future of design work looks like? I think sometimes when you look around you, the world can seem like a dark place, but I think the way designers think and bring things to the table, we're problem solving, you have to be optimistic and you have to be curious. And I think there's so much at our fingertips and so much that is evolving and changing that, have the power to harness that and make the world a better place.
Hey guys. I have kind of a specific question, I guess. Just when you were talking about prayer rooms and like religious spaces, I had a project a little while ago for designing rooms for Indigenous people and their ceremonies, and I was asked to provide like a standard, and I'm like, I don't think there is one. So I guess if you guys is there some research like Indian Research Institute that has something like this that I can look into?
So the question was whether there is specific research for Indigenous people ceremonial rooms.
Yeah,
or
like faith rooms,
etc. The short answer is yes, but you have to find it. I don't have a recipe. There is a lot of research that exists, and sometimes you need to read between the lines and go deep. I think when we are asked to design something that is completely out of our either knowledge base or comfort zone, I think going back to the messages we had, I think you need to ask the questions and you need to invite people that have that experience firsthand and have them walk you through it. I think you need to come prepared. You need to understand the questions that you're going to ask, but I think that's probably the best recipe and the best advice. Again, I think studying and understanding and listening and asking questions and finding that right person that can answer that question would be the goal.
Sorry, how much time does either of you get to spend returning to projects a year or 2 in to find out how people are using, misusing, experiencing the spaces that you design intentionally to?
So the question was, how often do we get to return to our finished projects and really see how people are in the space, how they're using it? I would say it's a mixture of not enough and sometimes quite often if you end up having more work with the same group, or you happen to kind of experience that space in your day-to-day life, that's a great way to kind of go back in there and look around and see what has happened. But I do think that is a critical part of kind of that full circle where it's the technical term is that post-occupancy evaluation, which sometimes we do that as a service, as part of our strategy work. But yes, I think being able to understand what is is happening and what works is so great for our own toolkit as designers to understand what we did, what actually worked, and take that on to the next project.
Hi, first I want to say I've walked past the Ford Foundation building post renovation, and I think it's one of my favorite buildings in New York. My question is, the interim project, which was done in Afghanistan, was it the interns from the Boston office that were doing it? And if so, there are many offices around the world for Gensler. Why did it end up in Boston?
I could take that. So the question was, the intern projects for SOLA, for girls from a school for girls from Afghanistan. Why was it done in Boston and how it landed there? I think like anything, any project, I think it's a personal relationship. And we have an incredible principal, Patricia Nobre, who had a connection and a relationship with the founder of the school. And that's how it landed in Boston. It was Boston, they were Boston interns, and and they didn't work alone. They worked along our colleagues that helped them and guided them and advised them. But it is most of the time a personal connection. And to kind of take it further, anytime we have a big kind of international project or a project that may be too big for an office or too big for that practice that's doing it. But we've always engaged talent from elsewhere to support our team. So as an example, I think we have a project right now in the office that has 20 offices working on, but it is a Boston project, but it lives in San Diego.
So there's an online question.
Yeah.
Can you speak about how color affects the activity in the room, or why it's centered to directly?
So the question was about color in space and how it affects the use or what it might be tied to in particular. I think to give kind of a specific instance to a very broad question, there was another project in our office where they were getting feedback from end users that some people really hated white open ceilings and some people really hated black open ceilings. And so luckily the project was large enough that they were actually able to provide white, gray, and black ceilings. So people can choose their own adventure, and it's a totally free address office. So you can really choose where you want to be and kind of find that right balance of glare or dimness or however you're feeling that day.
I have a question about like working, designing a project for a culture that is totally different than where you're at right now. So I'm aware that in Afghanistan, there's been a lot of wars happening, bombings and stuff like that. So, and mind you, the culture is very different there too. So how does it feel like working on a project like that is such a different, let's say, canvas?
So the question was, in a project like the school in Afghanistan, you know, it's completely different than where we are here in many ways. And how does it feel to be designing for something that is so different? I would say personally, that's always very exciting. That's one of the best reasons to become a designer, I think, is that you get to step into the shoes of other people and understand what their job is every single day. And so I think it's to come out, you know, even a richer person yourself, getting to learn about the project and users.
There is an application.
Soon. When are the intern applications? And intern applications usually start and then we evaluate them early spring, and we're trying to get them. We always moving that kind of point deadline earlier and earlier because we want to get the best people in.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, this was really great and really good for the different disciplines that are beginning here to get to understand the interior architecture point of view. I think that having been educated in the 20th century, and seeing your talk, what I'm aware of is that the categories of project have a lot of the edges are flexible. And you know, it's not a school. It's a ballet school that has to also accommodate people of different abilities, right? And I'm wondering, and maybe this is two answers for one for each of you or more after. Is there a scope of work or a type of problem that you would really love to bring into either the intern program or into the office together?
So the question was that the projects were shared were very diverse. And they're very specific and at the same time very broad, and whether there is a project that we would want to bring to either intern project or Gensler studio. It is a really tough one. And I need to talk through it to get to an answer a little bit. I think we showed you like projects that inspire us, right? Like, and those are the outliers, not necessarily the daily projects. I think we do a lot of work that's big and impactful. And I think the more impactful and the bigger and the more interesting is what I want to bring in. And where you can, I had a client once that we were designing for a testing facility. So a facility that receives your blood tests and sends results. And we were trying to get to a solution, and he said, okay, here's the deal. We are here every day to save lives. And as designers, we don't get to say that very often, but we can design spaces for people who save lives, bring great education, do amazing things, and make their work better, and make their work more creative, and make their work more productive. And it doesn't matter what project it is. And I don't think it matters what type it is. I think as long as there is a clear goal and a clear message for me that, okay, I'm making a big difference. I'm not just doing a layout. And we're impacting the space, we're affecting behavior, we are creating community. I think that's where, that's for me, that's where the excitement is.
I think just to give a very broad answer to your question, just really anything where there is cross-pollination. So you have lots of different things happening at the same time and everything is feeding off of each other, and you are providing a very unique voice to the project, and that is kind of being bounced back to you in a different way. And so just anything that has multiple program components where you're both learning and the expert is really something to be involved with.
Thank you for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you for the great questions. This was really fun.